Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This webinar is being brought to you by Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. We are excited tonight. We have several local officials who are going to be joining us and sharing with the audience about why they've run for office, just anything that they think that you may be interested in knowing. We would like to thank our co-sponsor, the League of Women Voters, and we'd also like to thank our supporters, the Divine Nine chapters, the NAACP, National Council of Negro Women, the CU Solidarity Sundays, then the ARC Jewish Action CU, and the ACLU of Champaign County. The webinar will start with our elected officials, and then we will have some questions and answers, some predetermined questions for them. Next, we will hear from community members about how to share with your legislators. And then finally, Ann Prisland will come and she'll talk to us about some election reminders. We have a new date for our primary election this year, and we have very important midterm elections coming up this fall. So Ms. Prisland will give us some reminders about those things. And then you'll have a chance to ask questions. We'd ask that if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and put your questions there, and we will answer those live at the end of the webinar. And then we will wrap up. So again, thank you for joining us. We're really excited about the information that we're going to be providing tonight. And tonight may go a little bit longer than our usual webinars, but we hope you will stay. We think there's some really important information that we have to share tonight. So we will start with hearing from our elected officials. But before I do that, I want to know just a quick poll question about how knowledgeable you are as an audience about our city council. So we'll go ahead and launch that poll now and just give you a few minutes to answer. The question is, how knowledgeable are you about your city council? Do you listen, attend city council meetings regularly? You just know what you read or hear on the news about city council, or you don't keep up with the work of city council at all? So if you go ahead and answer that poll, and then we will share the results with everyone in just a second here. All right, so it looks like the vast majority of you know what you read and hear on the news about city council. There are a few individuals that listen to the city council meetings regularly, so that's interesting as well. So without further ado, we will go ahead and hear from our elected officials. Today, we have Chaundra Bishop. We'll have her go first. She is a City of Urbana representative. Chaundra.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chaundra Bishop, and I sit on the Urbana City Council representing Ward 5. I'd like to begin by thanking Epsilon Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha and the other co-sponsors for hosting such an opportunity for us as elected officials to speak with our community, but also highlighting the importance of the upcoming primary election on June 28th. So the question is, tell a little bit about yourself. I currently work in public health and have been for almost a decade. This is my first political seat, I guess, if you will. When I decided to run, it was not a decision that I made lightly. For several months, I'd asked myself, why should I do this? Why me and not someone else? And that answer actually became quite simple because there is no one better. What if there is a new type of candidate that begins to run, one who's not motivated by winning a public office itself or by the power that comes with holding an office, but more so about the opportunity to help their community? It's like that quote that Pericles says, just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. I believe that city government should be rooted in equity, from the decisions that we make to the policies we enact and the way we listen to each other as neighbors. More than ever, cities have enormous control and impact on our daily lives versus state or national government. To me, local government is personal. It's about community, it's about trust. In the last several years, there's been a huge emphasis on quality of life and social determinants of health, which all are wrapped up in public health. So I felt that my background was needed and missing in places like city councils. I ran for office because I believe that we can achieve affordable housing, that we can provide access to homes for homeless services in every neighborhood, that we can make our cities walkable, bikeable, and public transit rich, that we can bridge the divide, the internet divide, that we can nurture and save small businesses, that we can make our cities safe truly for everyone. And so that's basically me in a nutshell and why I ran. And I'm looking forward to participating in tonight's webinar and answering questions from the audience. So thank you.
Thank you, Chaundra. Next, we will hear from David Iniguez.
Sorry. Sorry, that's Daniel Iniguez.
I'm sorry, Daniel.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yes. So my name is Daniel Iniguez. I am on the Champaign City Council. I represent District 3. I've been on for about a year now, and I am a first generation born Mexican American here in the U.S. My parents were migrant workers, and we traveled a lot as when I was younger with the seasons. I had a really interesting cultural experience as I went around to different parts of the country, seen many walks of life, many different aspects of this country. Something that I like to tell people is that when you see so many different cultures, races, and places of this country, the more different that people seem to be, you find so much in common with people. There's so much commonality in us in terms of like our wants, needs, fears, loves, things like that. So I was exposed to a lot of different ways of looking at the world, and which is one of the reasons why I ran for city council. In the past 5 years, I've seen where the social and socioeconomic landscape has gone in terms of where the world is and the problems that face the world. And I really thought that much like many people who run for city council, where they feel like, or any elected position, there just seems to be this calling that something that you bring to the table is needed. And that was what I felt. I felt that a lot of the issues that we are facing and will face moving forward were, are things that I can speak to. There's a lot of different problems that have arisen that I think that I have had perspective on, being of a minority background, growing up in a substance abuse home, growing up as in poverty, being homeless, being on the wrong side of the tracks, on my way to a not very bright future. And also the perspective of being a small business owner, being a minority small business owner. There are a lot of different aspects to what the world is looking at today that I wanted to bring my voice to. I wanted to speak on, and I wanted to help, bring light to. I know that elected positions aren't easy, and I knew that wasn't going to be easy. So, but I'm always up for the challenge. I consider myself somebody who never backs down from solving a difficult problem, and that's what brought me to this elected position. I want to, there is so much nuance in today's world, and I want to be able to speak to anybody and everybody who brings their constructive voice to the table. And that's one of the reasons why I ran for city council. So I hope to do a good job in my position. I hope to answer some good questions tonight, and I hope to give some perspective. And I want to thank everybody who organized this and everybody participating for giving me the opportunity to speak my truth, my voice, and hopefully we can all walk away from this with a good experience.
Thank you, Daniel. Next, we'll hear from Grace Wilken.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Wilken. I'm the representative for Ward 6 in Urbana, which is Southeast Urbana. I've been in that position for also just over a year. And I also wanted to thank the organizers who are hosting and for the invitation to be here tonight. Anyone who's watching with us now or later. I really appreciate the education and connection with the public and our local elected officials. I ran because I started getting interested in wanting to get involved in local governments for the past few years. I first started on an Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission, and that was an interesting way to kind of get in the door a little bit into some local politics and some things that go into that. I also started watching and speaking at city council members as a member of the public for probably over a year before running. During the pandemic, I had more time on my hands, had interest in getting involved in things as far as local government for social activism. And I also thought that the Zoom meetings at the time made it a little more accessible than coming down in person. So I spent quite a while listening to the city council meetings before running and was able to see some of the operations there. I wanted to be involved in our community and learn about our local government and the infrastructure that we have. I really enjoy, and I think I'm good at critical thinking and really deeply exploring a complex issue. Some of my academic background and professional is in science and education and sustainable infrastructure. I also grew up in this area and wanted to have a positive influence on the community. And what really kind of gave me the final push to run is that in my ward, there was only one person who was planning on running. And I just feel like democracy should be based on some choices. So that gave me kind of a final push to say, well, I'll give it a go just so that people in my ward have options if they would like another option. My platform that I ran on and things that I keep in mind are sustainability, which to me means social, environmental, and economic well-being. I also wanted to help increase equity, transparency, and accountability in our city system. And I'm passionate about hearing the voices that are often marginalized. As far as the influence that I've had as a council member, I definitely keep those campaign goals and platform in mind whenever I'm making council decisions. And I've learned a lot that our whole system is designed so that no one person can do anything alone. It takes a majority of a council for any decision to be made in policy, and it takes the city staff to actually do the work of implementing the policy. There's also a lot of decisions that are made before they come to council. And I don't generally have any knowledge or influence on what comes before us when. So I see my opportunity for influence and impact being my vote and my voice. I think there's been plenty of times when I'm in the minority and I don't have the power to change something, and I can still try to modify the change for what I believe is for the better. For example, we recently changed the appointment process in Urbana last year to appoint city staff every 2 years, and it used to be every year. The original proposal was for every 4 years, and I kind of pushed for that compromise of every 2 years because I think that, along with other constituents, that there's more opportunity for public and council participation with more frequent assessment of the reappointments. I also try to share my opinion or opinions that I hear from the public that haven't been fully considered, and have those pieces play into the conversation on any given issue. And I think that's all I have for introductions. I'm looking forward to more questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start with you since we have you up with the first question. How would you describe your role as a city council member? And since assuming your current position, has your perspective on the role of city council member changed? And if so, how?
Sure. Did you want me to start that one?
Yes, please.
Yes, I think my perspective has definitely changed since being in office. Some of the things that I've learned is understanding the interesting role of council. I think it's an interesting balance of being a member of the public, because we have other, jobs and livelihoods and backgrounds, and we're not involved in the daily operations or decisions of the cities. So I think that's a unique challenge because we might not know all the details for a decision that we're being asked to make because we're just not that involved in the day-to-day operations, and it's designed that way. So I think it's an interesting challenge to try to gather and understand as much as possible before we make any decision, to have an informed decision, and also accepting that there are those boundaries and disconnections as a way, I think, to keep us as that perspective of the public and kind of having an outside perspective on these decisions, and to really have the responsibility to the public and to our constituents more than city staff or other politicians. I think I've learned a lot about local government operations and infrastructure. And one of the big things that I've taken away is that there's never, at least that I've seen, 100% consensus on any given issue. I think people, may agree on general ideas like the importance of public safety, but there's not ever a 100% consensus on the way to get there, with more or less police or more or less community involvement. So I think that that's also an interesting struggle, because for me, it's not a simple thing of listen to the public and listen to your constituents, because I've yet to see a unanimous consensual opinion of the public. I think there's a big spectrum with a lot of different opinions, and I view it as my responsibility to listen to all of those, find out as much information as possible, and then make the decision that I think is best for the people that I'm representing.
Thank you. So same question for Daniel. How would you describe your role as a city council member? And since assuming your current position, has your perspective on the role of city council member changed? And if so, how?
Yes, so my role as a city council representative is to be a liaison from our constituents, the constituency within our district, and I encompass a lot of the entire city as well. But we really we are liaisons to a certain area of the city. We are the ones that the general public can come to as to hear their concerns, to look at mundane things, to look at serious things, to look at a wide range of different issues, and make sure that those things are addressed with the appropriate actions, with the appropriate timeline, and to make sure that our constituents' needs are met. The constituent needs are many, and they vary widely. You have a wide range of demographics, wide range of concerns, issues. Somebody might see a cracked sidewalk in one neighborhood and think it's the worst thing in the world. Somebody, in another neighborhood may have no sidewalk, which are very real things that we deal with. And the level of importance has to be, brought to the forefront with good judgment. So I see we city council representatives are that, that liaison to everybody who wants to be heard. It's that personal connection that you can have with the city without having to go through different departments. We are at the beck and call of our constituents in terms of, city matters that are operations based, city lights, signs, some of the more mundane things, but there are also socioeconomic, social, and economic issues that, are also a little more dire and more serious, that have longer or more broad impacts. And the decisions that we make now can impact the future in a positive or negative way. And you really don't know what that outcome could be. Echoing what Representative Wilken said earlier, you're just trying to make the best judgment call that you can make based on the information available. And it's a lot of information. A lot of information can be, overwhelming. It can be misleading, misinterpreted. So, it is a lot to take in. And in terms of what I thought my position was going to be, I pretty much assumed that that's what it was going to be. Being a business owner, those are the kind of hard decisions that you tend to have to look at. But as far as how's it changed, I've definitely learned to practice a lot of patience, to be a good listener. I think I've always considered myself to be a good listener and a good thinker and somebody who can communicate really well. But when you are on the receiving end of, what you perceive as negative, if not negative information, but, when people are upset about certain issues in the city, and they may not be upset with you directly, but they are upset with the city, you have to be able to bear that emotional weight and still think critically, still think clearly, and again, make the best judgment call. Outside of that, there really wasn't a whole lot that surprised me, but again, practicing patience and the ability to listen. Cities elected positions aren't for the faint of heart, and not because it's some kind of, house of cards type situation, but in terms of the emotional toll that it can take on you, because these are very not serious, but these are very important issues that affect a lot of people, and you're going to hear so many different opinions and perspectives, and no matter what you do, somebody isn't going to be happy. And if you're somebody who wants to do the right thing for everybody, it's going to be, it's a difficult job, but over time you develop that innate sense of of following your gut and knowing that the decision that you're hoping that you made the right decision long term. And if not, you also have to be a lifelong learner. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to be able to come back with humility and say, maybe we got it wrong and we need to come back at the table and think about it in a different way. So it definitely challenges you on a professional level. So, and I don't say those things to tell people to shy away from it. It is an honor and a true civic duty to represent your constituency, and you're a better person for it after the fact. It is truly an honor to do what we do.
Thank you, Daniel. Next, we'll go to Chaundra Bishop. Same question. How would you describe your role as city council member? And since assuming your current position, has your perspective on the role of city council member changed? And if so, how?
I describe my role on the council as one of 7 people who have been entrusted with upholding the public interest and making a decision that affects the entire community rather than any one particular person or group. Being a city council member means being a tireless advocate for not only my ward, but for the entire city. And I always knew to be an advocate that involved listening and deciding on matters that would achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the community. My perspective, I don't think hasn't really changed, but I guess I was sort of surprised about the amount of things at one time that council members have to deal with. We have to deal with a lot of different issues on a regular basis. I've learned that making policy is simply the act of making deliberate choices among different alternatives based on facts. And something Councilmember Wilken said about sometimes we're faced with a decision with not a lot of information. And so it's sort of left up to us to take on that extra task of digging more deeply into the issue, making sure that we're soliciting input from constituents on how they feel, because it isn't just what we think, but it's also what their input would be as well. Public policy is created when the council makes these choices or decisions with the best interests of the whole community in mind. In addition to making these policies, we are communicating those policies and programs to constituents, and we're also responding to constituent needs and complaints. So we're juggling a lot of different things at the same time. And so I guess that's one thing that I hadn't realized would be a big part of being on council, but good thing I'm a good multitasker.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stick with you and have you answer the second question. So both Champaign and Urbana city councils have established goals and priorities. Please choose one of your city council's priorities and tell us about it.
Sure. So every council does get the privilege of creating strategic goals and strategies based on things that they consider are important for and with the community. One of Urbana's council goals is to support housing security and equity. This is something that I'm really passionate about. And one of the strategies that we've come up with to achieve that goal is to pursue funds to reduce the number of blighted homes in the neighborhood and rehab them in an effort to increase the stock of affordable homes in our city. One of the things that I feel strongly about is filling in our neighborhoods, taking those blighted homes and rehabbing them instead of building new, spreading the city out more. I strongly believe in filling in the existing neighborhoods, making it more diverse, economically and racially diverse by filling in those neighborhoods with affordable homes. Another one of the strategies that works to reduce works to ensure housing security and equity is ensuring compliance among landlords in Urbana to make sure that they know about our human rights ordinance and that they cannot discriminate based on a form of payment for rent. And to let tenants know that it is against the ordinance to be discriminated against, and that there's a process in which they can make complaints against a landlord. So it's with those couple strategies, and there are more, we can improve and increase the number of affordable units in our city, because many of us know there's not a lot of inventory of affordable housing, and in no way should someone be denied safe housing based on their form of payment or their race or even the number of children they have, because those have been the types of complaints we've received. So ensuring that there's compliance with our human rights ordinance and reducing the number of blighted homes.
Thank you. Moving on to Daniel, same question. Thinking about your council's goals and priorities, please choose one of your city council's priorities and tell us about it.
Yeah, so we one of the big things that was addressed in our goal setting there's quite a few things. The one that really stands out to me was the gun violence issue and how our youth are affected and, in some cases participating in some of these situations, and really trying to get to the root of what brought us to this place where our youth are struggling to find something that isn't associated with something negative like it is with the gun violence and in some cases drugs or whatever. And that is something that we addressed in the blueprint, the gun violence blueprint that we drew up. We invested a lot of money from the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds, into a lot of different programs. We are taking this very seriously because obviously there's a lot of lives involved and at risk when it comes to gun violence. Gun violence in terms of the victims don't discriminate to just the people that are involved with gun violence. It catches a lot of there's a lot of people that get caught in the literal crosshair. So this is a very near and dear thing to a lot of city council people because it goes deeper than just the issue of guns, which is an issue in itself. Because it's involving our youth, because it's involving people who, are without options and resources, these type of things tend to, be deeper than just anger, malice, or hate. They are things that are rooted in, economics and, societal factors that, we need to understand. So before we go and punish people for, things that brought them to things that they were exposed to and brought them to a negative place. We wanted to look at it a little bit deeper, and we invested into a lot of different programs. And there were so many programs that we invested into that one could say that it diluted the effort, but our approach was because it's so multi-layered, we wanted to address it from different aspects. We wanted to make sure that the financial aspect of it was addressed, the economics of violence and gun violence specifically are there. The social aspect of it, are people being taken care of, or is the mental health aspect looked at? So we really wanted to get in depth with that, and I think that investing in so many different things and so many different areas, and investing in people, which is a hard thing to gauge success on. People are complicated. People can be messy. People can be, frustrating. We all have people in our lives that, we wish that we could help. Our own families, I'm assuming, I can speak for myself personally. But that was something that we really wanted to get into the deeper layers of. And I think I think it was the right approach to have a web type of effect of with the money. At the end of the day, all we can do is give it a shot and hope that we get some kind of return. And if we can save 1-2 lives, whether we know it or not, that's what we wanna believe in our hearts, and hopefully we will see some real tangible things. And jumping off from that, something that I wanted to personally go into with our goals is things that I used for my own personal growth as a troubled youth. I myself have been in a set of handcuffs a time or two when I was younger. At 40 years old, I'm a little more seasoned now, but having been that person, having been the person who was exposed to the violence and the neglect, that was something that I wanted to address myself, and something for me personally. And I am the fitness guy on the city council. I own a gym, and I coached football for junior high football for many years, and I really wanted to start looking at the aspect of physical health for our youth. There's some initiatives that I really want to get off the ground that I can't speak to right now just because it takes time to develop all these things. But the issue of gun violence, the issue of disparity and the lack of hope in our youth was something that we wanted to address. And those are some things that we, again, I personally want to see come to light, because I was that kid. I was the kid that was could have ended up in prison. And I hope that some of the actions that we take are gonna have some kind of a return to help some people.
Thank you. Moving on to Grace Wilken, same question. Can you choose one of your city council's goals or priorities and tell us about it?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it works well because I had picked to talk on one that hasn't been spoken on yet. I will just briefly recap that our 4 main areas for Urbana are public health and safety, housing that Councilmember Bishop already talked on, economic development, and sustainable infrastructure. And those are all very important, very complex goals. The one that I would speak on tonight is sustainable infrastructure, because that's one that I'm personally have a lot of interest in and was kind of more involved in this in great breakout groups when we were setting the goals. So our sub goals under sustainable infrastructure are to improve quality of current infrastructure, increase investment in infrastructure, and expand green or sustainable infrastructure within the community. I think that these are all very important for long-term viability of our community, especially when we look into the future or even now with the increase in gas prices and fossil fuel electricity. I think it's very important that we invest in renewable energies, electric vehicle stations, local food systems, and other equitable infrastructures for our community. Under this goal, there was also a project from the city of Urbana that was started kind of before, but kind of falls in this umbrella, is an equity and quality of life project where we set aside $2 million in last year's budget for increasing equity in infrastructure that has been historically inequitable and unequal. And for this one, we took a lot of ideas from the public on things that they might want to see for these infrastructure improvements. And that's still in the process of selection, as far as I know, and will be implemented soon. And under green infrastructure, we have some things that I find very personally exciting, such as exploring a disposable bag tax, like for plastic disposable bags, and that money going into a green revolving fund that could fund possibly future renewable energy projects. And then also under that is preparing and exploring for electric vehicle infrastructure with things like charge station and the electric grid preparedness. So that's a little bit about our sustainable infrastructure goal.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stick with you for a second and talk about our next question. So in our last webinar, we heard from Lamont Peppers of Urbana and Tracy Parsons of the city of Champaign about their work that the cities are undertaking to address gun violence. Can you share your perspectives on this work?
Yes, thank you. And I'm interested in that conversation. I'll have to rewatch that conversation. I'm not all sure what you heard from Lamont Peppers on the Urbana efforts. I think that Champaign has a very impressive blueprint and that coordinated effort that they have. I think that's something that I would love to see us working towards in Urbana. I would like for us to be doing more than we're currently doing in that kind of coordinated effort. And that's, again, some of the challenges of one person not being able to make those changes or a minority of council. And it's a big complex thing of the city operations, and it takes a really big effort from a lot of different places. I really hope that we can come together as a community from different ideologies, different political perspectives, different walks of life, and really come together to address this issue in the most safe and effective ways possible. One of our goals for the public health and safety for the city of Urbana is to support community organizations to address root causes of violence. And I think that's a very important one that I hope to see us very soon funding some local organizations that already have those connections and relationships to members of the community and already have a lot of the experience and expertise working in this field. I do think that grassroots community efforts and community healing and prevention work is going to be some of the most effective ways to deal with this issue. We've also sought a few options for outside support. There was research from a UIUC class that Councilmember Bishop was involved in, and she may speak more on that. Also, plans for community safety review from an outside organization to really assess the challenges, the needs, and the situation in Urbana and make some recommendations for what's going to be the most effective ways to holistically address community violence and community safety.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to Chaundra Bishop, same question. If you'd like to share your perspectives on the work that Lamont Peppers and Tracy Parsons have done.
From what I understand, Mr. Pepper's efforts is rooted in expanding the Self-Made Kings program to include the summer months, probably one piece of a bigger effort. So which I applaud, because when youth in the summertime have less structure than they do during the school year, that's when they tend to sort of fall into troubled issues. I think it's very promising to engage youth this way as a preventative strategy to gun violence. I would also like to see efforts around gun violence recovery and addressing the trauma that stems from it. As I mentioned before, I have a public health background, and recently tons of municipalities and public health organizations have declared gun violence as a public health issue. And so I truly believe on a federal national level, there needs to be much more research into gun violence and the approaches that many of the cities and municipalities have done to curb gun violence. And that's how I sort of came into working with some UIUC students because they have some grad students had an interest in researching other methods and programs that have been implemented in various parts of the country to as an approach to reduce harm and violence in their communities. So working with the students, they researched different sectors of the country. They looked at places like Oakland and Detroit, a smaller city in Florida, and just seeing what they use to reduce gun violence. And so many of the approaches consist of prioritizing community mental health support systems, at creating safe spaces for youth, recognizing community leaders as experts in their own communities, and supporting community-driven initiatives and proven models that focus on deterrence, and then even hospital-based interventions. And so a lot of that research that those students have done, we got a presentation at a council meeting by them, and we're hoping to use some of their suggestions as we deliberate on how and what to fund using our American Rescue Plan funds. And so I definitely would like to see more of the preventative side of it, addressing structural racism, addressing economic disinvestment in certain parts of the city. And so I think that getting to the root cause of violence will help to then stem and curb gun violence throughout our cities.
Thank you. Moving on to Daniel, I know you spoke about this a little bit earlier the last time we chatted with you, but do you have any other perspectives that you'd like to share about this work?
Yeah, again, kind of speaking to what I highlighted earlier, the grassroots effort, as was mentioned earlier, is very important, and I think that this approach with the blueprint really encompasses that. You know, with as dire as some of these situations can seem and feel, you know, government as an institution, I don't think can address these things because they're not just objective. There isn't just you know, there's this happening and it's, you know, it's this many people doing it, or this number of things are happening. You know, it's not objective. There's a reason, there's a rhyme and a reason behind it all. And again, a lot of my childhood was spent experiencing a lot of these things that, you know, that manifest themselves in this way. And that's what I would just continue to add, is that, you know, I come from you know, from the other side of of this conversation. You know, I've been around guns, I've been around violence, I've been around, you know, I've been exposed to the things that, you know, can and almost, you know, it can be discouraging, and there can be a lack of hope. And again, finding the things that changed my life for the better, the people, the types of people, we can find those things in these programs. We can find people that have a passion for giving back and for supporting the, you know, the people that are experiencing this. And with perspective, one thing that I remember, you know, growing up was that the only people that I really listened to were the people who understood where I was coming from, the people who, you know, had been through the ups and downs of life, and whether it was the exact same thing or not, you know, at the very least, they can speak to me with a sense of understanding. And I think that's what this blueprint can and will do. These are real people who have real experiences. I can share that with the people that are currently going through it. I think that kind of impact you can't put a price on, and you know, it can't be measured. And again, going back to my background of, you know, sports and things like that, you know, I can clearly remember the day that the football coach patted me on the shoulder pads for doing a good job, and even right now, the emotion comes over me of how I realized something that I was missing in my life. So to have that type of person in these programs, in these, you know, in these neighborhoods, reaching out to those that just want something, anything, they don't even realize it. They don't even realize what they're missing in their life, is going to have a huge impact. Again, one person can save so many people just by being there, listening to them, hearing them. So I think that this approach to gun violence, where we do need safety protocols, we do need a police presence, we do need financial resources, we do need, you know, a look at systemic issues such as racism, discrimination, and things like that. But those people who are right there with those who are affected the most are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. And it can be these people in the neighborhoods. It can also be, you know, the nurses in the hospitals. It could be the EMTs. It can be the neighborhood services people. These are people who are going to have the most impact. So even though government has this bird's eye view of a lot of things, the people that we're putting in place, I feel, are going to have the most impact. And I'm very hopeful about that.
Thank you for that, and thank all of you for your unique perspectives that you've brought to these questions. I have one final question, and anyone can chime in, or all of you if you'd like. Where can city residents find information about the city council and how it works?
So for City of Champaign, cityofchampaign.gov, I believe, I better not say that wrong. We have our city website, Google City of Champaign, and we have a city councils tab where you can find all of our agendas. They live stream our sessions, and they have them backlogged too. So if there's ever an issue that you want to research from the past, you can go back and it's all logged. You will see the agendas moving forward. So if there's a specific issue that you want to speak to, you can see when it's coming up on the docket, or just stay regularly informed. Everything is on record at the City of Champaign website.
And Urbana?
And in Urbana, you can go to the city's website, urbanaillinois.us, and then right on top there is a tab that says Contact City Council. And on that page, you'll find the calendar for city council meetings, all of our web addresses, and then also you can figure out who exactly is your representative. And then also, like I personally have a city council Facebook page. You're more than welcome to send me messages there or emails. And also my phone number is listed on the city website as well for phone calls.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Grace?
Yes, just a small piece. I think that all it was all well said on where to find that information. I was just going to add, as Chaundra was mentioning too, about Facebook or other platforms. The city has a Facebook page. There's also like a Sustainable Urbana Facebook page. So there's ones for different interests that people might want to follow. And I believe there's also for Urbana, it's either called the city newsletter or the mayor's newsletter that I believe people subscribe to. And then there's an email regularly with kind of headliner updates on what's going on in the city. So I think that could also be a helpful way for people to get a heads up for the big things that are going on currently.
Thank you. Thank you all. And we request that you all stay on the webinar. We will have an opportunity a little bit later for citizens to ask questions. They're going to be submitting questions through the Q&A. So if you guys can stay on to answer questions at the end. But right now we're going to transition a little bit. We have a very special guest tonight. We would like to hear from a couple of citizens who want to just share their experiences and tips on contacting and speaking to elected officials. Our first guest is Kimberly Iguaman. She's an accomplished attorney, orator, and consultant who prides herself on representing members of our community in specialized legal matters and issues impacting public safety and civil engagement. She's also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and a member of the International Connection and Social Action Committee. She coordinates all social action activities for the entire central region of our sorority. So welcome, Kimberly, if you'd like to just share your experiences with our audience.
Thank you. And to the president of Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and also to the Connection and Social Action Chairman Muriel Jones. You all have got a wonderful Connection Chairman. I bring you greetings on behalf of the International Connection and Social Action Committee, where I will be wrapping up 4 years as your representative for the Central Region, and that is coordinating social action for 7 states. I want to make sure I get it correct. The thing that I would say, and it has really been a pleasure to be in this role, we have been actively involved as an organization for many decades. As far as social action and talking to our legislators. And of course, it culminates with an event that we have every year called AKA Day at the state capitol. I've been involved with Illinois' AKA Day since 2006. And what we do with that particular initiative is we try to make sure that we are extremely knowledgeable about the process of going to Springfield or going to our legislators or going to any elected official and having in mind the result that we would like to get. So that means being extremely well informed. If you're part of an organization, it needs to be from the bottom up, not from the top down. So you need to figure out whether your organization operates out of consensus in which you all come to an agreement that everyone is going to agree with, or whether it's majority rule where there will be some people who agree with a certain policy decisions and others won't, but you still will have a united front. The point is that when you're pushing for policy, you need to be united. That's extremely important. Then to also be very knowledgeable about what you want to do. So that means, for example, in Alpha Kappa Alpha, we come up with what is called a pink paper in which we write out, for example, what the bill is or the proposal is, and we use that as our guide in going around and speaking with elected officials who we need to get on our side to pass a particular piece of legislation. There are many ways to skin a cat, but I'm just using this as an example of speaking with Springfield. The one thing that I would say also is that organizations and individuals should get to know who their legislators are. It's another part of the knowledge to know what it is each of these roles can do and what they can't do, so that you know that you're talking to the right people. They really appreciate that. And then also to build relationships with these people before you ever have to ask for anything. Build relationships, invite them out to come and speak about their roles, invite them out to speak about their passions. As you've heard from the legislators here, every one of them has a specific area that they really are passionate about that might stand out amongst the thousands of bills or ordinances or pieces of legislation. And some of them literally get thousands that they have to look through and they have to have an intelligent vote on. So get to know them before you ever have to ask a request from them, and be consistent and determined about what it is you want to have happen. The legislators, the elected officials work for you. You're taxpayers. They have taken on this role because they want to be representative of us. In a democracy, that is how it works. So they're representative of us, but they need to hear from you. They're going to hear from all sides. They need to hear from you, and they need to know that you are passionate, that you are going to be a very strong voice for the position that you are taking. That means that you also need to be open to hear their position as well. So you need to be open to be educated from them, and to also be open-minded about the things in which they may have extra knowledge about something. I'll just give you one example. Theta Omega chapter, where I happen to be president now, but years ago I was the connection chairman. And there was a bill that we just really loved down in Springfield. Senator Cullerton had it at that time. And it was to require at least one semester of civic education for every student before they graduate from high school. Now, this sounds like something that you would think was already on the books, but it wasn't. And we really loved that. The problem was the senator could not get it out of committee. So what we did as an organization was we looked at the bill, weighed the pros and cons, and really laid it out for our chapter. We took a vote and we decided to support it. We made sure that members from our committee followed the procedures so that we could go on record supporting it, meaning over 50 people from our chapter wrote witness slips, because that is the process in Springfield to go on record. They wrote out witness slips as proponents in favor of the bill. By that time, when it was time for it to come to committee again, it was time for AKA Day. So we went down as a united front and spoke with all of the senators and let that particular senator know that we were there in support. And because of the amount of support that we were able to mount up for this bill, we helped him get it out of committee. And as a force to be reckoned with, it went to the other house and it passed. So those are the types of things that you will be able to really see your work in action. And I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity just to speak on that.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have our past president, Jolynn Caroline, who's going to share with us some of her perspectives about and tips about contacting and speaking to elected officials.
Absolutely. Good evening. And it's always great to follow after another fantastic alum of the University of Illinois. Good to see my sorority sister, Kimberly. As Shayla said, I'm a member of the Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm also an attorney and I work at the College of Law on campus, but I'm also a citizen like each and every one of you. And I've had the opportunity and the fortune to speak to presidents of the United States, United Supreme Court justices, judges, senators, and representatives on both the state and federal levels. And I understand that can be really intimidating, but keep in mind, as Kimberly just said, these officials work for you. Whether you voted for them or not, if they are in that chair, they are a civil servant and they work for you. And if you have questions about pending litigation, legislation, policies, something you heard on the news or at a town hall, you have the right to contact their offices and ask questions. So first, how do you know who your representatives are? How do you find them? And so our representatives who are here tonight, they gave you information how to contact Champaign City Council as well as the Urbana City Council. However, if you are looking for your state and federal officials, I'm going to quickly do a share screen. So this is a site, hopefully everyone can see it. It's the Illinois State Board of Elections. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a Find My Elected Officials. So you enter in your address. This is actually the address of the Illini Union. So I wasn't going to use my home address, but this is, so you type in your address here. It finds your address, just confirms it for you, yes. And then once you confirm that is your address, Then you'll be able to see the contact information for your state and federal officers, everything from your congressional representative all the way to President Biden, as well as Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, down at the bottom. So this is a way that if you are, interested in reaching out to someone, it gives you phone numbers and it gives you email addresses for these contacts. Now, next, you can contact officials in a variety of ways, and several of the officials, council representatives tonight have shared. They have social media, they're on email, they're accessible by phone. So I've used all formats. I've called on the telephone, I've emailed, I've sent letters, I've contacted officials via social media. I think what is important is that you should pick the method that you feel comfortable with. If you prefer writing letters, write a letter. If you prefer email, send an email. Do whatever makes it easiest for you. Third, you don't have to wait until it is election time to reach out to an elected official. I think that's when a lot of people think about it is when an election is coming up. However, what I will say, and Kimberly mentioned this earlier, before just reaching out, you want to have an ask or a reason why you want to speak with them. So is there a pending bill that you want them to vote in favor of? Are you concerned about violence in schools? Are you concerned about inflation, et cetera? So have an idea of what you would like to discuss. Next, keep in mind that when you send this email or you make a phone call, chances are your senator is not going to pick up. They have staff members who usually answer the phone and check the emails. So don't expect that to be the person to directly answer your phone call. As we start wrapping up, I will say this: if it is an in-person meeting, and there are some in-person meetings even in the midst of COVID, first you want to thank them for their time and meeting with you. You want to be concise with your talking points because you will usually have a limited time to speak with them in between meetings and sessions. Now, if you aren't able to speak to the governor or your senator or representative, and you're speaking to one of their staff members instead, what you want to do before you leave, you ask them, are you willing to ask Senator whoever if she's willing to support the 123 education bill? You want to ask them, will you make sure, are you willing to ask her? Also, for in-person meetings and phone calls, follow up. That is what good employers do. And as we said, you're the employer, they work for you. So you want to make it clear to them that you're not just going to leave it at that email, initial phone call or meeting. You're going to check back in a few weeks or a couple of months to make sure they followed through on that conversation that you had. And as I wrap up and toss it back to Shayla, I wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. We all see things every day in our community and our state that we are upset about, we're irritated about, or sometimes we just want more information about it. And marches and protests, they are forms of advocacy and a way of making sure that your voice is heard. However, I think another form of effective advocacy that we often overlook is reaching directly out to those who are in positions to directly effectuate change and make sure that they see you and they hear your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolynn, for those thoughtful comments. I would just add to that, if you're intimidated about reaching out to an elected official, there are organizations that will help constituents draft letters on various issues. So, for example, if you're really concerned about gun control, if you just stick in Google letter to legislator about gun control, tons of organizations will pop up. They'll draft the letters for you. All you have to do is sign your name and stick it in the mail. There's also petitions out there that you can sign as well, where someone else has done the work and they're just looking for constituents to sign. So, so again, there's always ways to get involved. So I'd like to go ahead and launch a poll now that just discusses whether or not you have ever reached out or contacted an elected representative. So if you'll take just a moment to answer that poll, and then we'll share the results. All right, so it looks like the majority of our audience has reached out, but there's still some out there who have not. So hopefully by the end of tonight, we'll give you some more tools and tips on how to reach out to your elected official. And to that end, next we are going to hear from Ann Prisland. She's going to share some primary election reminders with us.
Thank you, Shayla. If I might reflect for just a moment on the wonderful information that Kimberly and Jolene gave us. I've been a voter for many years, but I had never, ever contacted any of my officials at any level. I was, quite frankly, scared. I didn't know what to expect. It didn't even occur to me that this was something that I could or should do. So Kimberly and Jolene, I wish I had heard from you earlier in my career. I didn't start actually contacting my officials until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I did have that fear that I would actually reach the senator or the representative, and he or she would grill me on why I wanted them to vote in a certain way. And of course, none of that happened. But what I did learn was, and actually the tips that I would have are very much what our two previous speakers said. A couple of years ago, the League of Women Voters put together a handout called Contact Your Representatives. And we have on the front page the contact information for, it turns out they're all still our current representatives, mayors, city council, state reps, and federal. So we have all that information there, which will support what Jolene shared with us from the State Board of Elections. On the back are some suggested approaches for contacting, especially by phone, your local representatives, and some models there. And one thing I would like to point out is it's perfectly okay to contact a local official to thank them for doing something. Sometimes we think the only reason we contact our local reps is when we're upset or we have an issue or there's something going wrong. It's wonderful to contact them and thank them because they need to know that we too support what they're trying to do. I have shared this document with Muriel Jones, and she'll make sure that it will be placed on the Alpha Kappa Alpha website in the connections section within the next day or so. So hopefully that specific information will be useful to everyone. I've been asked to bring you up to date a little bit on the status of our current primary. As Shayla mentioned right at the beginning, the primary is in exactly 2 weeks. The last day to vote in the primary is June 28th. I don't know about you, but I've heard lots of people say, oh, I'm just not even going to bother with the primary. I'll wait to vote in the general election. Chances are many of you have heard people say that same thing. I would like to propose that there are 3 reasons why voting in the primary is extremely important. The first reason is the issues that you're concerned about are also being addressed in the primary. The candidates who are on your ballot have taken positions that matter to you. So wouldn't it make sense to express your opinion now in the primary so that you can have a say in the issues that are being supported or opposed by various candidates. The second thing to think about is that in many cases, primary races are contested. There's more than one candidate for that one spot that will appear on your general election ballot in November. So your vote in the primary helps determine who will show up on my ballot in November. And the third reason is a quotation from a nonpartisan researcher at the University of Virginia. And this is my favorite one. His name is Larry Sabato. And he says, every election is determined by the people who show up, which is probably the best reason for voting in the primary. And that is that you are showing up. As Jolynn said, make sure your voice is known. And the best way to do that is to show up. So what do we have about showing up? What I'm going to do is share my screen, and I'm going to take us to the Alpha Kappa Alpha local chapter website, the connections section, where we've posted many of the materials that will be useful to you that have been prepared by the League of Women Voters. The first question we're getting a lot of is, where and when can I early vote? Well, here's the list. Many people like to early vote because there are many more opportunities and you can work it in around your work schedule or other commitments that you have. This list comes right from the Champaign County Clerk's website, but it's here on the AKA website. You can download it, photocopy it, whatever you want. As of yesterday, 11 sites in addition to the Brookins Center opened up in Champaign County. And if you look at the list here, chances are you'll find one that's close to where you live or work. I'm right now working as an early voting election judge at Parkland College. Parkland, like every other early voting site, is universal. Anyone in the county can vote at any of these locations. So if you want to come see me, I'd love to have you visit Parkland and cast your early vote. But for the first time, additional sites are opening. The weekend of June 25th through the 27th, another 12 sites will open at different locations in Champaign, Urbana, Mahomet, Savoy, and Rantoul. And finally, on the day before the primary election, more sites will open up, including one in Broadlands, Ivesdale, and Fisher. So that's a total of 30 early voting locations, multiple days and times, and opportunities for you to vote. I've also included on this handout the mail ballot drop box locations, which are also listed here for your use. So yes, please do vote early if that's an easy way for you to do it. And of course, you certainly can vote in person on election day. And if you know someone who's not yet registered, in Illinois, you can register and vote at the same time. Someone who's not registered should bring with them an ID and something else that shows his or her current address. It can be on paper or on the phone. So that's the first question we've been getting is, how can I vote early? Second question is, can I still request a mail ballot? The answer to that is yes. The county clerk recommends that you do that online at the county clerk's website and that you do it on or before June 23rd. I would say try tonight or tomorrow to make sure that the clerk's office has time to check your information and send you the ballot. You'll have time to do your research and get the ballot back so that it's received, or excuse me, it's postmarked by June 20, on or before June 28th, or it's in one of those ballot drop boxes by 7 p.m. on June 28th. And the third question we've been getting is, well, who's on my ballot? There are lots of ways to find that out, but here's one right here on your very own website. Take a look at the top line. I confess to the typo. It shouldn't be June 28th, 2002. It should be 2022. And that'll be corrected within the next day or so. The league has put together a list of all of the candidates on the Republican primary ballot and the Democratic ballot. When you look down this list and you see the shaded areas, those are all the races that are contested. So these are, this is an opportunity for you to think about the various candidates in contested races and think about their positions on the issues and which ones match up best with yours. There is one race in Champaign County that is contested in the primary, and that's the Republican race for sheriff. There are 2 candidates. Down at the bottom, you'll see a link where you can actually go to the county clerk's website and download your sample ballot. The other source of information that I wanted to share with you is back on the league's.
Oh, God.
What? I'm sorry, someone said something?
Okay.
Okay, I had my sharing screen is getting in the way here. Okay. The League of Women Voters homepage has 2 quick links. One is to that list of primary.
I'm not trying to but I had a much greater understanding.
One is to the link of list of primary candidates I just showed you. One is to the candidate guide that I know we talked extensively about in our last session.
And then, but then they want.
I'm sorry, could someone mute their mic? Thank you. 2 things I wanted to point out to you that have just been added to this site. There were debates for the Illinois 13 federal district between the Democratic candidates and then a second debate with the Republican candidates. You can find a link here to the videos of those 2 debates that were hosted by WILL, WAND, and the League of Women Voters. The other thing you can find way down at the bottom, do you see where it says LWVCC Video Guide? We offered the opportunity for all county candidates to submit 5-minute videos of the, talking about themselves and their races. And as you can see, quite a few of them did. This also includes videos of 3 judicial candidates. Each of those people is unopposed, but this may be an opportunity to hear from judicial candidates, which normally we don't get a chance to do. So if you're interested in hearing and seeing what the candidates have to say, I would suggest that resource to you. So again, please remember that every election is determined by the people who show up. And I'm very confident that everyone listening to this webinar will be among those who show up for the primary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. As always, you have a wealth of information to share with our viewers. So we are ready for Q&A. So if you're watching tonight and you have questions or comments or other suggestions about some things we've discussed tonight, please go ahead and type your question or comment in the Q&A section. And my sorority sister, Katina Wilshire, will share those with you now. I believe you are muted.
Sorry, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have 3 questions, 2 of which have been answered just based on the very elaborate and informative answers provided by our panelists. I know one of the questions, the panelists did provide their contact information, and both Jolene and Kimberly gave really great advice on addressing specific issues as citizens. But I do want to open it up to the panelists in terms of additional advice they may have for constituents who may want to reach out to them regarding an issue or a concern. If you have any additional advice, this would be a great opportunity to add that.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate all of the past speakers and all of that great information. I think as far as getting a hold of people, I think that in the meetings is a really great way to do it for every open public meeting in at least the state of Illinois, probably the country. You know, there's a section for public input to hear from the public, and always audience is welcome and allowed in person and remotely. So I think if people are able to speak in person at the meetings, that's a great way to do it. If not, they can also email is a great way. There's a city council at urbanaillinois.us, I believe, is the email for all the Urbana City Council and the mayor and some of the top leadership. You can also find individual person's email and get back to them that way. There's also phone numbers listed there. Something I did want to point out with communication is that anything in writing to us or any elected official is subject to public record under the Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act. So if people, just so they know, anything that they do send us about city business can be on the record. And if they would like a different setting where it's maybe not so, on the record, then there's also phone calls are a great way to do that. But just something for people to consider is that it's not a private means of communication when you're having written communication with us.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilken, for that additional information. Another question that was posed was relative to ideas and plans that both cities have in order to decrease gun violence in their cities. And I believe our panelists did a very thorough job just naturally answering this question from both cities, and Councilman Iniguez actually spoke about that in very details, in a lot of details regarding his goal priorities. So that has been answered. Thank you to our panelists. The final question that I have for this evening is to ensure you are representing your constituents effectively, will you host think tanks or open forums? And if so, how often will you offer these to your constituents? And that's open for any of our council members to answer.
I can begin. I did host a few coffee with Chaundra events early on in my tenure, I guess, with City Council. But as we sort of discussed, people are more comfortable just sending me an email or calling me on the phone with their individual complaints or issues or ideas or whatever. So I sort of step back away from those open forums. I'm always happy to talk one-on-one. Sometimes that's more helpful and takes less time for all parties involved. But I'm happy to once again open those types of forums up if the need is there. And I also like participating in these type of community open events where everyone can come and it feels less intimidating when multiple people are asking questions as well. So I'm open to all types of different ways to be reached. So I don't quite know yet if I'll bring back the forums just due to my time constraints. But as I said, an email or a phone call is probably the easiest and fastest way to reach me.
Thank you.
I would, I guess, answer that I have not done open forum think tank things since being in office. I am open to that idea. I think it's an interesting idea if there were a particular issue, particular people who would be interested in that. I think that one of my thoughts on it initially is that we also have systems like that in the official government system. I have attended, all listening sessions or study group sessions or public forums, public hearings and things that we've had. And I think that is a good way too, because that is open to the public. It's recorded, it's open to everyone, it's made available. We're sure that we're following the legal procedures on things and on open meetings. I think just one of my concerns with that would be, I don't want to have just a private group of people who have more of a, who I hear more from than others. I would want it to be an equitable thing and not just have the people who are in my personal network or who just happen to have a connection with me to have more of an opportunity for that than others who might not have that personal connection. So I think there's also something to say about making sure that we also follow some of the standard procedures and make sure that things are open and available and accessible for everyone.
Thank you.
So I've never held any kind of forum, but anybody who knows me knows that I like to talk a lot, and I am very much an in-person type person. Anytime I get contacted by a constituent via email, or if I get a message at the city, I contact them via email. I respond, and I always open up like, if you'd like to meet, my office is open. And I've had the opportunity to do that. So that type of platform, that type of format is definitely in my wheelhouse. And as great as the public meetings are, there's definitely, that need to have in a democracy a place where people on record can speak their voice, can be heard. I also think there's something to be said about that community forum where we're having a conversation. We are, listening to each other as people versus, coming in feeling like you have to get your point across in a way that can come off as militant with some people, just because you have that opportunity and you don't want to get it wrong. So you have to be very concise. You have to be very to the point, and it can come off. It doesn't come off as a conversation. It just comes off very direct and stern, which is good. When it comes to advocacy, you don't want to shy away from those type of things. But again, I also think that there's a space, a place, and a need for a more conversation type format. I represent District 3, and I would love to listen to people from District 3 as a collective, and maybe from different parts, different neighborhoods that might not ever cross paths. I enjoy making those connections with people from different walks of life. So for me, that is an open option for me. This invitation to this platform was an immediate yes, because again, I love having conversations. I didn't realize that I was going to be the only guy here, but that's okay. Like, I love it all. I was, and I say that I don't say that facetiously or any, in a weird joking way. Like, my mom, I was raised by very strong women, and when I see women, in positions where they can affect change and they can, take their destiny into their own hand, it resonates with me, just because those are the type of people, those are the type of influences that I had in my life. I had 2 sisters before I ever had a brother. All my cousins were girls, so I played hopscotch and learned to braid hair before I ever played football. So, yeah, it's again, but these are things that you don't get without having that conversation. That's not a comment that I'm just going to make out on the dais or on my campaign trail. These are things that we learn about each other, and I think it humanizes us all to hear those perspectives that you might not know. Again, me being at first glance, you might not have known that about me, or what my influences were, but those type of organic conversations, I think, are very sorely needed, especially today. I feel so, I see how the tension in today's, modern way of communicating affects people mentally. And, it saddens me, because I see so many people that have different perspectives and have grown so tense in their opinions, who in a previous, situation were really great friends, have loved each other. And, and that's the kind of thing that I personally want to see, because I personally have seen enough negativity in my life, and I don't want that for the future. I don't want that for our kids. And that's just me getting personal. But again, things that we learn about each other in the open forum conversation that can be those town hall type panels and stuff. So my 2 cents. And again, as you see, I love to talk. I can keep talking forever, but I'm going to leave it right there. And if anybody has any questions, a couple more things. I didn't leave my contact info. My email is on the city website. And another thing I wanted to mention is that I am also a U of I alum, and I forgot to mention that. And I know we got a lot of U of I alum here, so I just wanted to represent. So I apologize for not bringing that forward. All right. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
And those are all the questions we have for this evening. So I will turn it back over to our moderator.
Thank you all. We really appreciate our elected officials coming and sharing with us tonight. We've had a wealth of information tonight, and we also like to thank our special guests, Kimberly and Jolynn, and Ann, who gave us lots of tips that hopefully everyone will implement in the future. This is our, well, we have one more webinar scheduled this fall. That is going to be September 21st at 6:30 p.m. Where we will discuss voter turnout and trends. We just like to remind everyone to vote in the primaries one more time, and also the midterms this fall. We also like to remind all of the participants to check out our chapter website. It's akabeeomega.org, and also follow us on social media. Speaking of social media, tonight's webinar is being live streamed on Facebook, and the recording will be on our chapter's Facebook page. So if there's groups or organizations you'd like to share tonight's webinar with, please feel free to share our Facebook link of tonight's evening. So again, I'd just like to thank everyone for your attention, for the good questions. And that is all we have. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.